Hey, what's going on, my friends? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor, and today I'm going to share with you 5 things I think you should know about this powerful and expansive and very fast-paced energy of the upcoming full moon on August 1st, 2023. Yeah, the one thing I want to note before moving on to the 5 themes is that it's very fast-paced, very expansive. And now some of you are hearing the word expansive and thinking, dude, no, I'm going through crazy shadow work. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of blocks, a lot of things like that coming up. And the thing is, with these expansive waves of transformation that people on planet Earth now sometimes find themselves going through, especially you fellow spiritual seekers, is it can manifest in a myriad of different ways. Some people are going to find they're very busy. A lot is going on in their life, a lot of change, a lot of things falling away, new things coming in, and your plate is overflowing with stuff to do, and you're burnt out and your head is spinning. Some of you are going to have that degree of change, essentially, going on a very internal level. Like big breakthroughs, or being confronted with your blocks in a way where you must figure it out. It's like the blocks can come up and there's this awareness that I can't do anything. I can't move forward. I can't find peace until I figure this out. And there's this pressure. And it's quite uncomfortable, quite frankly. I've been through it many times. But in this type of energy, that's where these releases, these healings, these conclusions of very old, stored up karmic energy gets to finally be released and resolved and moved through. And a lot of you are probably saying, Vic, I'm going through all the above. Welcome to the club, my friend. It's all good. It's all happening. It's all an experience of you raising your frequency at a very quick rate. With that said, I'll go ahead now and get into the 5 themes that'll give you a lot more clarity in relation to what I just said. Number 1, called to move on, perhaps in some way. Some of you are feeling called, not called like there's this mysterious inner force. You just might know, quite logically even, that you need to move on. It's time to move on. As wonderful as whatever situation you're still in was, and regardless of how long things were good and in harmony with this relationship, with this living situation, with this job, etc., it's you've changed too much. And now it's time to move on. And you'll get these signs. It reminds me of when I was living in Florida years ago. Me and my wife and my daughter at the time, we had a smaller family at that time, and we felt called to leave everything behind and move down to South Florida. And we came from Michigan, where it was cold out, and we finally got down there around November. And it was so amazing. It was so perfect. Not just the weather, but vibrationally. It was such a match. It was so ideal. And we created this wonderful little life for ourselves. And then I just assumed in my mind, I'm like, oh, this is where we're going to live now. This is our home base. This is it. Then one day I woke up and went for a walk. And I had the most bizarre day where I went for a walk in this neighborhood we were in. And I kept passing really, this is not a judgment, but really old people, 80s, 80-year-old man, 80-year-old woman with these really weathered looks on there. I was in Boca Raton, Florida. It's a lot of old people who are very rich live there, and it's I was realizing this is not your vibe. This is not your neighborhood, bro. And then I thought, you know what? I'm gonna find some peace. I'm gonna go to the beach, and I went to this little river access almost. It's called the Intercoastal, and I go to my little spot, which is just down the road from my house. And there's this big, ugly, machine-looking boat thing with black smoke coming up out of it. And I found myself unable to escape these negative, low vibe things that for some reason either were never there or I was oblivious to. Regardless, I was waking up to the fact that my environment, it's not as conducive to my happiness and me thriving as I previously thought. And it was undeniable. And it created this pressure to move on, this realization that this is not my frequency. This frequency here in this location, it's not working for me. But then that begs the question, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to move because of your perception of the mismatched frequency, Vic? And the answer was, yeah, we got the hell out of there. But there's this weird limbo state between when you realize it's time to move on. Again, this could be totally the same thing for like a relationship even, where you realize, oh, this ain't working. I have to move on. There's like this feeling of like, I have to move on. But then you're like stuck in the situation for sometimes a little while. And it can feel like, well, how am I supposed to what am I supposed to do? Because sometimes practically you just can't move on instantly. There are like practical things that must get done, logistical things and time that you must wait and things like that. But in the meantime, you are finding yourself in this very mismatched vibration, which is uncomfortable, which does sometimes create these physicalized manifestations of that misalignment, these little like problems, these little hiccups, these little like these disturbances, you could say. And you're just having to kind of endure it as you wait impatiently, waiting to get the hell out of Dodge. And a lot of people reach out and they say, what do? You do your best. You look at it like this too shall pass. And if anything, let it be a confirmation that you're making the right choice, moving on, and whatever that might mean. Number 2, you are upgrading. A lot of times people become afraid to upgrade. There's of course the resistance to letting go of stuff that you don't want to part with, even though you know you need to. Kind of like what I was saying before. Sometimes there's a hesitation of leaving the familiar in exchange for the unknown. But even that, a lot of times the unknown isn't so unknown. It's almost like an example would be like leaving one job for another job. It's known there's a new job, but it can be scary because sometimes we fear that this new job is just a metaphor I'm using here. This new job, it has some resemblance to the old job. And the old job was horrible. There were problems. There were like things that happened that I don't want to repeat. The reason why I'm leaving. And it's like there can be this fear and this assumption basically that history is going to repeat itself. And I think I might have mentioned this in a recent video, but it bears repeating because that's not the case. It's not the case. When you feel, especially if you relate to number 1, where you're like vibrationally all of a sudden, I want to say higher than your circumstance because you've changed so much. The change, the new thing you're bringing in is not going to be just like the old one by definition. You can feel the vibrational mismatch if you're still in the situation. So it's like you are moving out of that. And even though there might be some parallels, maybe it's a new person, a new coworker, a new house, a new living situation, a new job. It might be similar, but it's going to be way better. You're going to find yourself really happy, I believe, with the result. You're going to say, wow, this is like better in pretty much all conceivable ways. This is an improvement in ways I wasn't even hoping for, but here it is. More than that, more than the surface level, things being much better on paper, more than that, there'll be that feeling of resonance, which is like the most important thing. There'll be that feeling of compatibility. The universe is just trying to move you from somewhere to somewhere else that's way better. But again, one of the mind's functions, if you haven't realized, is to protect you from repeating things that hurt you from the past. But the mind can take this job way too far. So anything that even bears a slight resemblance to something in the past that stung or hurt or betrayed or whatever, it's like, whoa! It can like color this entire new situation darkly because of this one little like connection, this loose connection to the past. And it's important to just understand the mechanism of transformation that you are in the process of going through right now. You are changing, you are growing, you're upgrading so quickly that people like me have to make videos like this because there are folks out there changing and improving so much. But because of that, it's like this upward traveling spiral. You travel around this same like orbit and it's, oh, this is similar, but no, it's not because it's a higher version of it. Number 3, with this transition, some of you may still be experiencing some cleansing of, we'll call it ancestral residue, or part of your internal process of these changes, of this upgrade. It's like it's confronting, dealing with, releasing things that are kind of more connected to your ancestral trauma, we'll say, versus like your current lifestyle, your current incarnation. And again, this can be confusing. I'm not going to go into detail about this. I just talked about this. In fact, I'll leave a link to a video in one of these corners of a recent video where I go a lot deeper. If you do feel like you are going through ancestral healing, which basically involves processing big emotions that don't seem to have a place in your lifetime. Like, for example, like, why am I so afraid of water? Just an example off the top of my head, but you've never had a bad experience with water. It wasn't like you almost drowned as a kid. That would make sense. You don't know anybody who's drowned, or you don't know anybody's home that was washed away in like a hurricane or anything. But yet here you find yourself with I ain't going near water. I'm terrified of it. There's a paralyzing fear of water, and I don't know why. I don't know where it comes from. A lot of seekers are going through this ancestral trauma. It could have been like your great-great-great-grandmother knew someone who drowned, and it just affected her. And because she was living in a different time, she had no idea how to like cope with it emotionally. So that stuck in her as she died and crossed over. And then the next generation brought it in, and they didn't deal with it much better either. And down the line, finally, thank God for all of those folks, you're going through a spiritual awakening. You can release this from your own physical body, which is where it's stored, whether you like it or not, whether you brought it in yourself or not. It's there, and you're letting it go for that, you and them. And I promise you, they're looking down. They're like rooting you on. Thank you. It's a very beautiful thing. So honestly, there's been times on ayahuasca where you really, when I've taken ayahuasca, we really see the ripple effect of doing this kind of work. I know you didn't consciously ask for it, and it is difficult. I go through it too. I'm going through it right now, which is why I'm talking about it. And it's like, whoa, some of these emotions you got to face, man, are just so heavy. So heavy is the best word. Not dark, but just, it's like, man, our ancestors have been through some shit, and it's sad in a way. But what's coming up is being released. And you're freeing yourself and them. And it's a noble job. I'm happy to do it. I'm not like looking to do more than I need to, but I understand, at least I think I understand, of the gravity of the situation, and it's an honor, and I'm very happy to do it and to help in this way, because I know it's helping people that extend way beyond myself. Number 4, it's also a great time to set yourself up for success, for abundance, for the new, by building a solid foundation, by not rushing too much, not letting your impatience get the best of you, and skipping over the essential but sometimes boring and lengthy process of building a foundation. When you have a solid foundation in your business, in your new life circumstance, maybe even within yourself, maybe you're feeling called to, maybe you're realizing the connection between your own self-mastery and your own success and happiness in life. And you're realizing, you know what? I may need to wake up an entire hour early to meditate and to do whatever permission slips, whatever practices get you in your groove. And yeah, it's time consuming. Yeah, it's not fun. Most of the time you're not going to wake up when the alarm goes off, but you realize the importance of a solid foundation. This also implies, especially if you're building a business, writing a book, doing something creative like that. I knew this guy. He runs probably the most successful ayahuasca retreat center in the world, and I talked to him on a number of occasions. And he said to me one time, he was like counseling me almost about my own business. He said, Victor, he said, let it take a decade. He said, I know you don't want it to take a decade, but let it take a decade. He's like, if you want to know my secret, is to sign my name on every little thing I do. Where if any stone is unturned, you can look and say, that was done well. That was done to the best of my ability. That was done with integrity. I took my time. I didn't rush it, and sign my name. And so it's a good philosophy for life. Ironically, that guy turned out to be not who I thought he was, but besides the point, that lesson still stuck with me, and it helps me with my own impatience sometimes. And sometimes during these cycles of expansion, there's like this feeling like you can get a lot done in a very short amount of time. And that's true. But I've also realized that if you want these things, these structures, this new, whatever the new is for you, you're building in your life, creating, manifesting, if you want it to be there years from now and you want to continue to grow and flourish and thrive, cannot race through it. We cannot be impatient. We have to take our time building the foundation. But then once you have that foundation, then things can really take off. They really can. I've experienced this in my business where I felt guided to slow down, do less, focus on quality, focus on value, make it as good and amazing as you possibly can. And even though it's like in my own sort of, life experience, it means like making less money, doing, not marketing and selling as much, but like focusing on the value. Once it becomes like to a certain level of quality, then it's almost like you have the support of the universe and things synchronistically start happening. You start attracting the different players and team members and ideas and all the different things you need to take this thing to a whole way bigger level than you could have ever imagined. It's almost like the universe is rewarding people that are taking the time to build a solid foundation. And then you get to align with this divine support. And finally, it's a fantastic time to invest time and energy into the most important foundation, which is yourself. I'm not advising you to do this. I'm saying I predict, I suspect a lot of you are already in your own way feeling like excited to do such a thing. Maybe you're like excited, maybe a new yoga studio opened up down the street and you're like, not only am I going to sign up, but I'm really excited about mastering this art of yoga and seeing how good I can get. And maybe I have to go to bed earlier and wake up and get more sleep. And maybe I have to adjust my diet. Maybe I have to like meditate before going. And you're like, but this all might come from enthusiasm. And like you just want to do it. And it's a fantastic time to do that. There's a direct correlation between my state of consciousness, the way I'm living my life, my lifestyle, my habits, and like what I have in my life. What I attract to myself to experience, who I attract to myself. It all is really just, as all the masters always have been saying, it's like an extension, a projection of me. And now is a fantastic time to really make a lot of breakthroughs and establish a lot of just good habits, an improved, more like higher vibe lifestyle. And it's going to help you like manifest stuff that you want, but it's also going to lead to more happiness and inner peace. And what comes to mind is what I heard David Goggins say. Some of you might not know David Goggins, even though I honestly think, as sort of abrasive as he is, he's got a mentality that can be very helpful to a lot of the light worker folks I've met. He's a very hardworking guy. He's like he's a hard ass, like a military dude. Again, a lot of you might not even know him. But anyway, he was on a Joe Rogan podcast one time when I was listening to him, and they were talking about people wanting to find their life purpose. And David Goggins, he's like this crass, kind of like blunt speaker. He's like, man, I forgot the way he put it, but he basically says like, you got to be ready for your purpose. It's like, you don't go around finding your purpose. Be ready for it. What does he mean by that? He means like, become the best version of yourself now. Get in shape, clean up your diet, get some good quality sleep, cut out the bullshit friends, cut out the bullshit food, stop watching so much freaking TV. Master yourself, spend time reading and educating yourself, improve yourself. So when your purpose comes looking for you, you're actually ready and you can rise to the occasion for it. And finally, I just want to say, my friends, it's a word to the wise, something that I never used to do, but I'm doing much better at it now. And that is being grateful. Even for the situations you're moving out of, whether it's people or a circumstance or a job. And right now, maybe the universe is kind of, framing it under a certain light to give you the motivation to expand out of it. So it's maybe like challenging, but a lot of times I look back at these old situations that I was so eager to move on from with nostalgia. So I realized they had a valid place in my life. And even though there were imperfections, there were many blessings, very many special experiences that maybe are now gone, that maybe this new situation, I'm not having that happen. So I try as best I can to not be in a rush to do anything, and to understand it's on a higher level, it's all good. It's all stuff that we called forth to go through as a human being, spirit, in body. And there's a lot of blessings even in the bad stuff, even in the circumstances that it's time to move on from. So the mantra of this full moon for me is gratitude.